The first time I met Grant Holloway, he shook my hand like he was doing me a favor. His office smelled like expensive coffee and fresh paint, like someone had tried to cover up old smoke with money. The walls were glass, the kind that lets people see you working but never hear you thinking. Behind him, the skyline cut across the window like a knife. "You're smart," he said, smiling without warmth. "That can be useful here. Or it can be inconvenient." I laughed like it was a joke, because I still believed people meant what they said. I was 31. New title. New salary. New building with security gates that clicked shut behind me like a warning. I'd clawed my way up from a tiny town in Ohio where dreams were treated like illnesses. I'd lived on ramen, slept on couches, watched my friends get married while I worked weekends. I told myself it was worth it because I was building something real. Arden & Lowe wasn't just a company. It was a machine that ate talent and spit out titles. They called it performance culture. The truth was simpler. It was fear, dressed in business casual. My first month, I learned the rules fast. Don't send emails after 9 p.m. unless Grant is copied. Don't question the numbers in meetings. Don't ask why the same vendor always wins bids. Don't say the word ethics like it's a real thing. And don't ever outshine Grant. My job was compliance operations, boring on paper, dangerous in practice. I checked processes, training records, internal audits, the kind of work people ignored until it saved their careers. Grant had hired me after my predecessor resigned. That was the word they used. Nobody said why. Nobody said where she went. When I asked HR, they smiled like I'd asked what brand of hand soap they used. She chose to pursue other opportunities, they told me. The woman's name was Marisol Vega. She'd been at Arden & Lowe for 7 years. Her profile photo was still on the company intranet, like a ghost that didn't know it was dead. I didn't think about her much until the first time I opened a folder on the shared drive labeled training_4_phenol. Inside were attendance logs, certification PDFs, and completion data for a training program that didn't exist. At first, I assumed it was a mistake. Maybe the files were misnamed. Maybe the training was canceled. Maybe someone uploaded drafts. Then I started checking. Dates that fell on Sundays. Employee signatures that matched each other a little too perfectly. Names of people who weren't even hired yet. My stomach tightened in that quiet way it does when your body knows the truth before your mind wants to admit it. I printed the roster, walked down the hall, and asked a manager I trusted, a woman named Denise, who'd been there long enough to have seen every wave of executives come and go. "Did we run this training?" I asked. Denise stared at the paper, then at me. Her face went blank in a way I'd only seen once before, in courtrooms and hospitals. "Don't touch that," she said softly. "What is it?" My voice came out too steady, too calm, like I was trying to sound brave. Denise leaned closer, like the walls had ears. "They probably did. That's Grant's project," she whispered. "It's how he keeps the board happy. It's how he keeps regulators off our backs. So it's fake." Denise's eyes flicked down the hallway toward Grant's glass office. I didn't say that. I went back to my desk with the paper still in my hand, like it had weight, like it could bend reality just by existing. For the rest of the day, I watched people move through the office like actors who knew their lines. Smiles. Laughter. Lunch plans. No one looked afraid. But fear was there anyway, tucked beneath their words like a blade under a suit jacket. That night, I stayed late. I logged into the training platform, cross-referenced completion records with login data, and exported the audit trail. I didn't need to do it. I could have walked away. I could have told myself it wasn't my business. But compliance is always your business until you pretend it isn't. The audit trail told a story I didn't want to read. One admin account, high-level access, had pushed hundreds of completions in bulk. Same timestamps, same IP address, same pattern. And that admin account belonged to Grant's executive assistant. I sat back in my chair and stared at the screen until my eyes burned. Somewhere in the building, the cleaning crew moved quietly, their carts rolling like distant thunder. The office lights hummed. My phone buzzed with a message from my mom asking if I was eating enough. I didn't answer. I just took a screenshot, saved a copy to a secure folder, and emailed myself a summary to my personal account. Not to expose anyone. Not yet. Just to make sure the truth didn't disappear overnight. The next morning, Grant called me into his office. He didn't waste time. "I hear you've been asking questions," he said, folding his hands on his desk like a pastor about to deliver a sermon. I kept my face neutral. I'd learned that emotion was blood in this place. I noticed inconsistencies in the training logs, I said. If regulators ever audit, Grant held up a finger and smiled, still warm on the outside, still empty inside. "Let me stop you right there," he said. "You're new. You're eager. That's adorable. But you're looking at this the wrong way." I said nothing. He stood and walked toward the glass wall behind him, staring down at the floor of employees like they were pieces on a board. "Do you know why companies get in trouble?" he asked. "Not because they make mistakes. Because someone inside gets scared and starts documenting things." He turned back to me. "Compliance isn't about truth," he said. "It's about comfort. The board wants to feel safe. Investors want to feel clean. Regulators want paperwork. That's all." My heart thumped once, hard. "I'm responsible for accurate reporting," I said carefully. "If these records are false..." Grant's smile fell away so fast it felt like the room got colder. "You're responsible for what I tell you you're responsible for," he said. Then his voice softened again, like he was handing me a gift. "I like you, Lena," he said, using my name like it belonged to him. "I hired you because you're talented. Don't make me regret that." I walked out with my spine straight and my hands shaking. At my desk, Denise didn't even look up. She just slid a sticky note across my keyboard. "Stop." I didn't stop. Not because I thought I was a hero. I didn't. I wasn't brave. I was terrified, but I'd grown up watching my father get crushed under men who smiled while they stole from him. I'd seen my mom cry at the kitchen table over bills that didn't care about effort. I'd sworn I'd never be the kind of woman who knew something was wrong and chose silence because it was easier. So I started documenting quietly. Carefully. Like I was building a case against a storm. I created a private log with dates, files, and screenshots. I printed audit trails and stored them in a folder at home. I saved copies on an encrypted drive that I kept on my keychain like a weapon. I also started looking for Maricel Vega. Her LinkedIn was scrubbed clean after Arden and Lowe. No new job, no activity, just a dead end. I searched court records. Nothing. I searched news archives. Nothing. Then, on a random Tuesday, I found an old compliance forum thread where someone had posted anonymously about being pushed out after raising concerns about training fraud at a mid-size finance firm in Chicago. The details lined up like teeth. The post ended with one sentence that made my throat tighten. "If you're still inside, get out. They don't just fire you. They erase you." I read that line twice, then a third time, as if repetition could soften it. That same week, HR announced a surprise internal audit. "Just routine," they said, "standard procedures." But I noticed something. The audit scope was narrow. It didn't touch the training logs. It didn't touch Grant's department. It focused on compliance operations, my team. Me. 2 days later, I was invited to a performance review. It wasn't scheduled on my calendar like normal reviews. It was a meeting request from HR with no details. No agenda. Just a time, a room, and the kind of politeness that feels like a trap. I walked into the conference room and saw 3 people waiting. Grant, HR Director Marcia King, and a man I didn't recognize, wearing a suit too perfect to belong to anyone who did real work. He stood and introduced himself as Internal Security. The door shut behind me with a soft click that felt loud. Marcia smiled like she was about to read me a bedtime story. "Lena, thank you for coming," she said. "This won't take long." Grant leaned back in his chair, watching me like I was entertainment. The security man slid a folder across the table. "Do you recognize this?" he asked. Inside were printed emails. My emails. The ones I'd sent to myself. The summary. The screenshot descriptions. My chest went tight, but I kept my face calm. "How did you get those?" I asked. Grant shrugged like it didn't matter. "Company network," he said. "Company data." Marcia's smile never moved. "We have concerns," she said, "about your integrity." I almost laughed. The audacity was sharp enough to cut. "My integrity?" I said, "because I flagged fraudulent records?" The security man's voice was flat. "Because you accessed confidential data outside your role," he said, "and because you exported internal records." "I exported audit trails," I said. "That's my role." Grant leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Not when you're trying to build a personal case file," he said softly. "That makes you a threat." There it was. Not a mistake. Not a misunderstanding, a threat. Marcia slid another sheet across the table. A termination notice. "Effective immediately," she said. "We're letting you go for violating data policy and creating a hostile environment." My mouth went dry. Hostile environment. I looked at Grant, and he looked back like he'd already won. "What about the fake training logs?" I asked. Grant tilted his head, almost sympathetic. "Those don't exist," he said. "Not in any way that matters." He nodded at the security man. "Escort her out." My hands were cold when I signed the exit paperwork. Not because I agreed, because refusing would have been a scene, and scenes were what they used against you. The security man walked me to my desk while the office watched without looking. I could feel eyes on me, but nobody met mine. Nobody wanted to be next. As I packed my bag, Denise finally stood and came closer. Her face was pale. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "It's okay," I whispered back, even though it wasn't. She slipped something into my hand like she was passing contraband. A folded business card. No logo, just a name and a number. Marisol. My stomach dropped. I looked up at Denise, but her eyes were pleading. "Don't call from your phone," she whispered. "And don't go home first." The security man cleared his throat. "Time," he said. I walked out of Arden and Lowe with a box in my arms and my heart in my throat. Outside, the cold air hit me like a slap. Chicago wind off the lake, sharp and unforgiving. I stood on the sidewalk for a second, watching the glass building reflect sunlight like it was innocent. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "You took copies." "Good," I froze. Another buzz. "Meet me today." 4015, West Loop. Coffee shop on Fulton. Back table. No name, no explanation, just a time, a place, and the kind of certainty that told me someone had been watching. I didn't know if it was Marisol. I didn't know if it was a trap. But I did know this. Grant Holloway didn't just fire me. He wanted me scared. He wanted me to walk away and disappear. I tightened my grip on my box, turned away from the building, and started walking. Because if they thought erasing me would be easy, they had no idea what kind of woman they'd just created. I didn't go home. I walked until my legs hurt, then kept walking until the city noise drowned out my thoughts. I bought a cheap burner phone at a corner store where the cashier didn't look up once. Cash only. No receipt. I tossed my regular phone into a trash can 2 blocks later and didn't look back. At 4014, I pushed open the door to the coffee shop on Fulton. It smelled burnt and bitter, like regret soaked into brick walls. Music hummed low, just loud enough to hide private conversations. The back table was empty, except for a woman sitting with her back to the wall, hands wrapped around a paper cup like it was the only warm thing left in the world. She looked older than her company photo. Not by much, but enough to tell me time hadn't been kind. Her hair was pulled back tight, streaked with gray she hadn't bothered to hide. Her eyes lifted the second I walked in. "You're late," she said. "I'm early," I replied, checking the clock behind the counter. She smiled faintly. "Good. That means you're cautious." I slid into the chair across from her. "You're Marisol," I said. She nodded once. "And you're Lena. Or you were." I flinched at the past tense. "You sent the message," I said. "No," she replied. "You sent the message. I just responded." She leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Grant fired you exactly how I said he would, didn't he?" I swallowed. "For integrity violations." Marisol snorted. "He loves that one." She pulled a slim folder from her bag and placed it between us. "Everything you found," she said. "I found too. 2 years earlier. I didn't touch it. I didn't trust my hands not to shake. They didn't just fire me," she continued. "They reported me." My stomach twisted. "Reported you for what?" "Data theft. Corporate espionage. Intent to sabotage." My mouth went dry. "I never stole anything," she said. "I documented fraud, same as you." She took a slow breath. "They froze my accounts, locked me out of every system. Told future employers I was under investigation. Not officially, of course, just enough to poison the well." I thought of my inbox already filling with automated rejection emails. "They isolate you," she said. "They make you feel crazy, like you imagined it all." She finally pushed the folder toward me. "Open it." Inside were printed emails, audit logs, internal memos, names I recognized, dates I remembered, and something new. Board correspondence. Grant's name was everywhere, but so were others. "This goes higher than him," I whispered. Marisol nodded. "It always does." I looked up. "Why didn't you expose them?" Her laugh was soft and hollow. "I tried," she said. "Every regulator, every hotline, every ethics board you can think of." She met my eyes. "Do you know what happens when a complaint lands without public pressure?" "It disappears." My chest tightened. "So what now?" I asked. Marisol leaned back, studying me like a doctor deciding whether to operate. "Now," she said, "you decide if you're willing to lose more." I didn't answer right away. I thought of my parents, my student loans, my career built on fragile trust. I thought of Grant's smile when he called me a threat. "What did it cost you?" I asked. She didn't hesitate. "My job, my savings, my reputation, 2 years of my life." She paused. But it didn't cost me the truth. Silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. "I'm not asking you to be a hero," she said. "Heroes burn fast. I'm asking you to be patient." She slid a second card across the table. A name I didn't recognize. "Investigative journalist," she said. "She doesn't publish without receipts, and she doesn't scare easy." I took the card. "What about you?" I asked. Marisol stood, pulling on her coat. "I stay invisible," she said. "That's how I survive." She hesitated at the door. "They'll come for you quietly at first," she added. "Legal letters. Threats disguised as concern. Maybe an offer." "An offer?" I echoed. She smiled, tired but sharp. "They always try to buy silence before they bury it." Then she was gone. That night, I sat in my apartment with the lights off, scrolling through job boards that suddenly felt hostile. Every listing looked like a door I wasn't allowed to open anymore. At 9:32 p.m., my email pinged. From Legal Affairs, Arden and Low subject, confidential matter. My heart started racing before I opened it. The email was polite, professional, warm. They were concerned about the stress of my departure. They wanted to resolve matters amicably. They reminded me of my signed confidentiality agreement. Then came the number. 6 figures. A severance enhancement contingent on one condition: I not disclose any internal information related to my employment. Ever. My hands trembled. That money could erase my debt. Buy time. Let me breathe again. Grant had always known exactly how much silence cost. I didn't reply. The next morning, a courier delivered a thick envelope to my door. Inside was a formal cease and desist letter. They accused me of data theft, breach of contract, and reputational harm. They demanded I confirm in writing that I had destroyed all copies of internal records. I sat on the floor, letter shaking in my hands. They weren't bluffing. They wanted me scared. And it worked. For 3 days, I didn't sleep. Every knock at the door made my heart jump. Every unknown number felt like a threat. I started imagining lawsuits, courtrooms, headlines with my name twisted into something ugly. On the 4th day, I called the journalist. Her name was Evelyn Cross. Her voice was calm, steady, like she'd heard fear before and knew it didn't scare her. "Tell me everything," she said. So I did. I talked for 2 hours straight. About the fake trainings, the bulk uploads, the board emails, Marisol, the threats. She didn't interrupt once. When I finished, there was a pause. "This is solid," she said finally, "but it's not enough." My stomach sank. "I need proof they knew," she continued. Proof they benefited. Proof it wasn't just one executive. I swallowed. "What kind of proof?" "Financial," she said. "Follow the money." That night, I went back to my encrypted drive. I hadn't looked at the vendor records closely before. I'd been focused on compliance, not cash. Now I dug deeper. The same training vendor appeared again and again, always overpriced, always approved quickly, always tied to executive discretion. I searched corporate registries. The vendor was owned by a shell company. That shell company traced back to a trust. And that trust listed one beneficiary. Grant Holloway. My breath caught. I sent everything to Evelyn. Her response came fast. "Holy hell," she wrote. "This is it." 2 days later, my former coworker Denise called me from a blocked number. "They're panicking," she whispered. "Grant's been calling emergency meetings. The board's nervous." My heart pounded. "How do you know?" I asked. "They asked it to audit access logs from the last year," she said, "and they're blaming Marcia. HR scapegoat." "They always eat their own," Denise said. That afternoon, my burner phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. "Lena," Grant said. Hearing his voice made my skin crawl. "You've made a mistake," he said calmly. I didn't respond. "We can fix this," he continued. "You're young, talented. You don't want to be known as difficult." I laughed then. I couldn't help it. "You fired me," I said. "You don't get to mentor me now." His tone hardened. "You think you're protected?" he asked. "You think a journalist will save you?" "I think the truth will," I replied. Silence crackled on the line. Then he spoke softly. "You don't understand how this works." I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. "I do now," I said. I hung up. That night, Evelyn texted me a link. "Story goes live in 48 hours, she wrote. "Once it's out, there's no pulling it back." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Everything I'd built was already gone. What remained was something sharper. Resolve. If they wanted to erase me, they'd have to explain why I refused to disappear. And for the first time since I walked out of that glass building, I slept. The story went live at exactly 6:00 a.m. Evelyn didn't soften a single edge. She laid it out clean and brutal, fake compliance records, shell vendors, money looping back to executives who preached ethics from glass towers. Names, dates, documents. Screenshot. Grant Holloway's face sat at the top of the article, cropped from an old corporate headshot where he looked confident and untouchable. By 2007, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. texts from unknown numbers, missed calls, emails flooding an inbox I'd almost forgotten existed. By 6:15, Arden and Lowe's website went down. By 6:22, the board issued a statement saying they were aware of the allegations and conducting a thorough internal review. The language of panic always sounds polite. I sat at my kitchen table with cold coffee and watched my life detonate in real time. Fear didn't leave, it changed shape. At 8:40 a.m., Evelyn called. "They're trying to discredit you," she said. "Anonymous tips claiming you were disgruntled. Incompetent, fired for cause." "I expected that," I said. "Good," she replied, "because the second piece drops tomorrow." I closed my eyes. "There's more?" "Oh yeah," she said. "The money trail woke up regulators. Federal ones. My breath caught. Grant's not answering calls," she added, "and the board is eating itself alive." By noon, Marcia King resigned. By 2:00 p.m., the training vendor quietly shut down its website. By 4:30, Grant Holloway was placed on administrative leave. The phrase made me laugh out loud, administrative leave, as if this was a misunderstanding, as if he'd be back after a vacation. That night, my doorbell rang. I froze. I hadn't told anyone where I lived, not Evelyn, not Marisol. I moved slowly, quietly, heart pounding in my ears. Through the peephole, I saw two men in suits. One held a badge. My knees went weak. I opened the door anyway. "Miss Carter?" The taller one asked. "Yes, we'd like to ask you a few questions." They were calm, respectful. Nothing like the threats I'd imagined. They sat at my table and asked about files, timelines, conversations. They already knew most of the answers. They just wanted me to confirm. "You did the right thing," one of them said when we finished. I almost cried at that. After they left, I sank into a chair and shook. Because doing the right thing doesn't make you fearless. It just means you're scared and moving anyway. The next week was a blur. Every news outlet picked up the story. Former employees came forward. Anonymous tips turned into sworn statements. What Grant had built on silence collapsed under the weight of people who were tired of being quiet. One night, I got a message from Marisol. I saw the article. That was all it said. I replied with a simple thank you. She responded an hour later. "You're stronger than I was. Don't waste it." 2 days after that, Grant was arrested. Not for the training fraud, for wire fraud. Tax evasion. Obstruction. Turns out, when you follow the money long enough, it starts confessing. I watched the footage on mute. He looked smaller in handcuffs. Older. Like someone had finally taken the air out of him. No smile, no warmth, just fear. The board issued another statement. They expressed deep regret. They promised reform. They hired a consulting firm to rebuild trust. Trust, once broken, doesn't care about press releases. I got emails from recruiters again. Some apologized for earlier silence. Some pretended nothing had happened. Some offered me roles with words like integrity and transparency bolded in the subject line like they were charms. I didn't answer right away. Because something in me had shifted. I wasn't hungry for titles anymore. I was hungry for truth. Evelyn invited me to coffee. This time, I didn't sit with my back to the wall. "You could write," she said. "You have a voice people listen to." "I didn't choose this," I said. "No one ever does," she replied. "That's why it matters." A month later, I testified. Under oath. On record. Calm. Grant's lawyer tried to paint me as emotional. Vindictive. Bitter. I didn't raise my voice once. Facts don't need volume. When it was over, I walked out of the courthouse into sunlight that felt unreal. Reporters shouted questions. I didn't stop. I didn't need to explain myself anymore. 6 months passed. Arden and Lowe rebranded. New logo. New leadership. Same building. I never went back. I started consulting independently. Compliance, ethics, governance. The kind of work that keeps companies honest or exposes them when they aren't. The calls came steadily. Quietly. People who didn't want another Grant Holloway running their halls. One afternoon, Denise called me from a new job. "They're still talking about you," she said, "like you're a cautionary tale." I smiled. "Good," I said. "That means they learned something." That night, I stood on my balcony and watched the city glow. I thought about the woman I'd been when Grant shook my hand. Eager, naive, afraid to take up space. She was gone. In her place stood someone sharper, quieter, unwilling to be erased. Revenge didn't come as fire or shouting. It came as truth. It came as patience. It came as watching a man who thought he was untouchable learn that silence is only powerful until someone decides to speak. And if you're listening to this wondering whether it's worth it to stand up when the cost feels too high, I won't lie to you. You lose things, but you gain yourself. And that's the kind of victory no one can take away.